Marcus Whitmore stood on the marble terrace of his Beverly Hills mansion, a glass of aged scotch in his hand, surveying his empire with cold satisfaction. The morning sun glinted off the massive swimming pool below, but this was no ordinary pool. It was his twisted pride and joy, filled with piranhas he had imported at great expense, a symbol of his power and his cruelty. At 52 years old, Marcus had built his fortune through ruthless business deals and trampling over anyone who stood in his way. He owned tech companies, real estate empires, and had politicians in his pocket. Money had given him everything, or so he thought, but it had also turned his heart to stone. He treated people like objects, disposable and worthless, especially those who worked for him. The mansion sprawled across 5 acres, with 20 bedrooms, an indoor cinema, a private gym, and gardens that required a team of gardeners to maintain. But despite all this luxury, there was a darkness that hung over the estate. The staff whispered among themselves about Marcus's temper, his cruel games, and the way he enjoyed making people suffer. Sarah Mitchell had been working as a maid in the mansion for 3 months. She was a 40-year-old single mother who had moved to Los Angeles from Georgia, hoping to build a better life for her 2 teenage children. The job at the Whitmore estate paid well, better than anything she could find back home. So she endured the long hours and the demanding work. Sarah was a dignified woman with kind eyes and a quiet strength that came from years of hardship. She had lost her husband to cancer 5 years ago and had been struggling to make ends meet ever since. Her son was 16 and her daughter was 14. Both bright students who dreamed of going to college, Sarah worked tirelessly to give them that chance, even if it meant swallowing her pride and cleaning the floors of a man who looked at her like she was nothing. Marcus noticed Sarah on her first day, but not for any good reason. He saw her as another servant, someone beneath him, someone he could toy with. He made her redo tasks that were already perfect, criticized her work in front of other staff members, and found excuses to dock her pay. Sarah bore it all silently. She needed this job desperately. The other staff members liked Sarah. She was kind and helpful, always willing to lend a hand or share a word of encouragement. Maria, the head housekeeper who had worked for Marcus for 10 years, tried to warn Sarah about their employer. Maria had seen others come and go, broken by Marcus's cruelty. She told Sarah to keep her head down and avoid him whenever possible. But Marcus had a particular hatred that ran deeper than his usual contempt for his employees. He was a racist, though he would never admit it publicly. His prejudice showed in how he treated his black staff members differently. With extra harshness and deliberate humiliation, Sarah became his favorite target. One morning, Marcus called Sarah to his office. She stood before his massive mahogany desk while he sat back in his leather chair. A cruel smile playing on his lips, he told her that he was hosting a party that weekend, a gathering of fellow billionaires and celebrities, and he wanted the mansion to be absolutely perfect. Sarah assured him it would be, but he cut her off, saying he doubted someone like her could understand what perfection meant. The insult stung, but Sarah kept her composure. She simply nodded and left the office. Determined to prove him wrong, she worked harder than ever that week, coordinating with the other staff to make sure every detail was flawless. The gardens were trimmed to perfection, the windows sparkled, and every room gleamed. The day of the party arrived, and the mansion buzzed with activity. Expensive cars rolled up the long driveway, and guests in designer clothes stepped out laughing and chatting. Sarah and the other staff moved quietly through the crowd, serving drinks and canapes, invisible to the wealthy guests who barely noticed them. Marcus was in his element, showing off his wealth and his infamous piranha pool. He gathered guests around it, bragging about how he had spent a fortune to stock it with the deadly fish. Some guests laughed nervously while others seemed genuinely impressed by his bizarre display of power. The pool had become legendary among his circle, a conversation piece that reflected his dangerous personality. As the evening wore on, Marcus drank more and his mood darkened. He began looking around for someone to entertain his guests with, someone he could humiliate. His eyes landed on Sarah as she passed by with a tray of champagne glasses. A wicked idea formed in his mind, and his lips curled into a sinister smile. He called out to her, his voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Sarah's heart sank as she turned to face him. She knew that look. She had seen it before, and it never meant anything good. The party was in full swing when Marcus Whitmore decided to turn his cruelty into entertainment. The golden light strung across the terrace cast a warm glow over the crowd of wealthy guests. But there was nothing warm about what was about to happen. Marcus had consumed enough alcohol to loosen whatever thin restraints he normally kept on his worst impulses, and now he wanted to put on a show. Sarah felt every eye turn toward her as Marcus beckoned her closer with a condescending wave of his hand. She approached slowly, the tray of champagne glasses steady in her hands despite the trembling she felt inside. Years of working in service had taught her to mask her emotions, to present a calm exterior even when her mind was screaming warnings. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus announced loudly, his words slightly slurred but still commanding attention. "Let me show you what happens when people don't know their place in this world." The guests shifted uncomfortably, some laughing nervously while others exchanged uncertain glances. They had heard rumors about Marcus's behavior, but witnessing it firsthand was different. Marcus walked over to Sarah and snatched the tray from her hands. The champagne glasses wobbled dangerously, but somehow remained upright. He thrust the tray at another staff member and grabbed Sarah roughly by her arm, his fingers digging into her skin hard enough to leave marks. She winced but didn't cry out, refusing to give him the satisfaction. "Do you know how much this party cost?" Marcus asked Sarah, his face inches from hers, his breath reeking of expensive scotch. "More money than you'll see in your entire pathetic life." Sarah remained silent, her jaw clenched tight. She had learned that responding to his provocations only made things worse. Silence was her only defense. But Marcus wasn't interested in silence tonight. He wanted a reaction. He wanted to see fear and humiliation. He dragged Sarah toward the edge of the swimming pool, the one filled with his prized piranhas the fish had been fed earlier in the day. But Marcus had instructed his pool keeper to keep them slightly hungry, just enough to make them aggressive if anything disturbed the water. The crowd followed, drawn by morbid curiosity and the uncomfortable awareness that they were witnessing something wrong but feeling powerless or unwilling to stop it. These were people who lived in a world where money bought silence and complicity, where standing up to someone like Marcus Whitmore could mean social exile or business consequences. Maria, the head housekeeper, pushed through the crowd, her face pale with fear. She had worked for Marcus long enough to know he was capable of terrible things, but this was beyond anything she had seen before. "Mr. Whitmore, please," she tried to intervene. "Sarah has done nothing wrong. The party is perfect. Everything is exactly as you requested." Marcus spun around, his eyes blazing with rage. "Did I ask for your opinion?" He snarled at Maria. "Get back to work before you join her." Maria opened her mouth to protest again, but another staff member pulled her back, whispering urgently that she would only make things worse. Tears streamed down Maria's face as she watched helplessly. Sarah stood at the edge of the pool now, the dark water rippling slightly beneath the lights. She could see shadows moving below the surface, the piranhas circling slowly. Sensing something was about to happen, her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. But she refused to beg. She had her dignity, and that was something Marcus Whitmore couldn't take from her, no matter what he did. "You people think you can come into my house, into my world, and that somehow makes you equal to us," Marcus said, addressing Sarah but speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. "You need to be reminded of your place. You need to understand that there are consequences for forgetting who you are and who I am." Some guests began backing away, uncomfortable with the direction this was taking. A few pulled out their phones not to call for help, but to record what was happening in their world. Everything was content, even cruelty, even potential tragedy. They would watch and film but not intervene. That was the unspoken rule of their society. Marcus placed both hands on Sarah's shoulders. She could feel the pressure building, feel the moment approaching when he would push her into the deadly water. Time seemed to slow down. Every sound became amplified, the music playing inside the mansion, the nervous chatter of the guests, the gentle splash of water against the pool's edge. But Sarah wasn't thinking about the piranhas or the pain that might come. She was thinking about her children, about her son who wanted to be an engineer and her daughter who dreamed of becoming a doctor. She was thinking about how hard she had fought to give them opportunities she never had. And she was thinking that she couldn't let this man break her spirit, even if he could break her body. Just as Marcus began to push, Sarah turned her head and looked him directly in the eyes. What he saw there wasn't fear or pleading. It was something else entirely, something that gave him pause for just a fraction of a second. It was strength, unwavering and unshakable, the kind that comes from surviving things far worse than a cruel billionaire. But that moment of hesitation passed quickly, and Marcus shoved hard. Sarah felt herself falling backward, the world tilting as gravity pulled her toward the dark water below. The splash echoed across the terrace like a gunshot. silencing the nervous chatter of the guests instantly. Sarah's body hit the water hard, the impact knocking the breath from her lungs as she plunged beneath the surface. The cold shock of it sent her system into overdrive, every nerve ending screaming as she instinctively fought to orient herself in the darkness. Above the water, Marcus stood with his arms crossed, a satisfied smirk on his face as he watched the ripples spread across the pool. The guests had gone completely silent now, some with their hands covering their mouths in horror, others still holding up their phones to capture what they believed would be a gruesome spectacle. No one moved to help. No one jumped in to save her. They simply watched and waited. Maria collapsed to her knees on the marble deck. Sobbing uncontrollably, she had tried to warn Sarah, tried to protect her, but it hadn't been enough. The other staff members stood frozen in shock, their faces pale with the realization that their employer had finally crossed a line from which there could be no return. This wasn't just cruelty anymore. This was attempted murder beneath the surface. Sarah's training kicked in, something none of them knew about her, something she had never mentioned because it seemed irrelevant to her life as a maid. Back in Georgia, she had grown up near the coast, spending her summers at her grandmother's beach house. Her grandmother had insisted that all the children learn to swim, not just for recreation but for survival. Sarah had become an excellent swimmer, even earning her lifeguard certification when she was 17. She had worked as a beach lifeguard for 3 summers during college. Before life took her in different directions, before marriage and children and the weight of responsibilities made her forget about that strong, capable girl who could swim for hours without tiring. But the body remembers what the mind forgets. And as Sarah's initial panic subsided, those old instincts came flooding back. She opened her eyes underwater, the chlorine stinging slightly, but her vision adjusting to the artificial lights that illuminated the pool from strategic points along its walls. She could see the piranhas now, dozens of them, their silver bodies flashing as they darted toward her with predatory speed, their razor-sharp teeth exposed as their mouths opened and closed in anticipation. But Sarah didn't thrash or panic. She knew that would only attract them faster, would trigger their feeding frenzy instinct more aggressively. Instead, she moved with deliberate, smooth strokes, keeping her movements controlled and purposeful. She had read once that piranhas were most dangerous when they sensed fear and erratic movement, that they attacked wounded or struggling prey. The first piranha reached her. Circling her leg cautiously, Sarah remained calm, continuing her steady movement toward the shallow end of the pool. She could hold her breath for nearly 2 minutes, another skill from her lifeguard days, and she planned to use every second of it. The piranha nipped at her uniform but didn't latch on. Confused by her lack of panic, more fish approached, drawn by the disturbance in the water. But something unexpected was happening. Sarah's steady, confident movements were confusing them. Piranhas were ambush predators, accustomed to attacking injured or frightened creatures that splashed and struggled. Sarah was doing neither. She moved through the water like she belonged there, like she was just another predator sharing their space. On the surface, Marcus's smirk began to fade as seconds ticked by without blood spreading through the water. He had expected immediate carnage, expected Sarah to surface screaming and thrashing, making it easier for him to claim it was an accident, that she had stumbled and fallen. But the water remained relatively calm, just ripples and the shadows of fish circling below. "What's happening?" one guest whispered to another. "Why isn't she coming up?" The mood on the terrace had shifted from horrified fascination to something else, a creeping unease that perhaps this wasn't going to play out the way Marcus had intended. Some guests began backing toward the house, suddenly wanting distance from what was unfolding. Marcus stepped closer to the edge, peering into the water with growing agitation. He could see movement below, could see the piranhas circling, but he couldn't see Sarah clearly. The lights created shadows and distortions that made it difficult to track exactly what was happening beneath the surface. His hands clenched into fists, frustration building as his sick entertainment wasn't delivering the results he wanted. 30 seconds had passed since Sarah hit the water. Then 45, the guests were murmuring now, their discomfort growing with each passing moment. Some were already rehearsing in their minds how they would describe this to their lawyers, how they would distance themselves from Marcus Whitmore and his psychotic display. At the 1-minute mark, Sarah was halfway across the pool, the piranhas still circling but maintaining a wary distance. One had bitten her sleeve, tearing the fabric but not reaching skin. Another had bumped against her leg but swam away when she didn't react. They were confused, their instincts telling them something was wrong about this prey. Sarah's lungs were beginning to burn, the familiar sensation from her diving training. She knew she had another 30 to 40 seconds before she would need air. But she was close now, close to the shallow end where she could surface and pull herself out before the fish could regroup and attack. Her muscles ached from the controlled swimming, but she pushed through the pain. Marcus watched with growing rage as he realized his victim was somehow surviving, somehow navigating his deadly pool with unexpected skill. This wasn't supposed to happen. Sarah was supposed to be helpless, supposed to be destroyed by his power and his piranhas, but instead she was making him look like a fool in front of everyone. Sarah's head broke the surface of the water with a gasp, her lungs pulling in air desperately as she reached the shallow end of the pool. Water streamed down her face and her uniform clung to her body. Torn in places but with no major injuries, the piranhas had retreated to the deeper end, confused and agitated by their unsuccessful hunt, circling in frustrated patterns beneath the lights. The collective gasp from the crowd was audible. Guests stood with mouths hanging open in disbelief. They had witnessed something impossible. A woman had survived Marcus Whitmore's piranha pool. Not just survived, but emerged relatively unscathed. Phones were still recording, capturing every moment of what would become the most talked-about incident in their social circle for years to come. Sarah pulled herself up onto the pool deck with practiced ease. Her arms strong despite the ordeal. Water pooled around her feet as she stood, her chest heaving with exertion but her posture straight and dignified. She looked directly at Marcus, her eyes blazing with an intensity that made him take an involuntary step backward. There was no fear in those eyes anymore, only righteous anger and something else, something that looked almost like pity. Marcus's face had turned a deep shade of red, rage and humiliation warring for dominance in his expression. He had been made to look weak in front of his peers. His ultimate symbol of power had failed him. A simple maid had survived what should have been certain death, and worse, she had made it look easy. His hands trembled as he pointed at Sarah, his voice cracking with fury. "You think this is over?" Marcus shouted, spittle flying from his lips. "I'll destroy you. I'll make sure you never work again. I'll have you arrested for trespassing, for theft, for whatever I need to charge you with." His threats came rapid fire, desperate attempts to reassert control over a situation that had spiraled completely away from him. But before Sarah could respond, before anyone could move or speak, a woman's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "I don't think you'll be doing any of that." Marcus, the voice was calm, authoritative, and carried the weight of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Every head turned toward the mansion's French doors where a striking woman in her 60s stood, her silver hair perfectly styled, wearing an elegant evening gown that probably cost more than Sarah's annual salary. The woman was Victoria Ashford, one of the wealthiest and most influential people in the country. She owned a media empire that included newspapers, television networks, and digital platforms. Her opinion could make or break reputations overnight, and she had been inside using the restroom when the incident began. She had emerged just in time to witness Sarah's survival and Marcus's threats. "Victoria," Marcus stammered, his bravado deflating like a punctured balloon. "This is just a misunderstanding. The help got clumsy and fell into the pool. I was about to call for medical assistance." His lie was transparent and pathetic. Everyone there had seen him push Sarah, had heard his cruel speech beforehand. The recordings on their phones proved it beyond any doubt. "You think this is over?" Marcus shouted, spittle flying from his lips. "I'll destroy you. I'll make sure you never work again. I'll have you arrested for trespassing, for theft, for whatever I need to charge you with." His threats came rapid fire, desperate attempts to reassert control over a situation that had spiraled completely away from him. But before Sarah could respond, before anyone could move or speak, a woman's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "I don't think you'll be doing any of that." Marcus, the voice was calm, authoritative, and carried the weight of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Every head turned toward the mansion's French doors, where a striking woman in her 60s stood, her silver hair perfectly styled, wearing an elegant evening gown that probably cost more than Sarah's annual salary. The woman was Victoria Ashford, one of the wealthiest and most influential people in the country. She owned a media empire that included newspapers, television networks, and digital platforms. Her opinion could make or break reputations overnight, and she had been inside using the restroom when the incident began. She had emerged just in time to witness Sarah's survival and Marcus's threats. "Victoria," Marcus stammered, his bravado deflating like a punctured balloon. "This is just a misunderstanding. The help got clumsy and fell into the pool. I was about to call for medical assistance." His lie was transparent and pathetic. Everyone there had seen him push Sarah, had heard his cruel speech beforehand. The recordings on their phones proved it beyond any doubt. Victoria walked slowly across the terrace, her heels clicking against the marble with measured precision. The crowd parted for her instinctively. She stopped beside Sarah, taking in the younger woman's soaked appearance and the torn fabric of her uniform. Then she turned to face Marcus with an expression of pure contempt. "I watched through the window," Victoria said coldly. "I saw everything, and I'm quite certain that every person here with a functioning phone captured it as well. You deliberately pushed this woman into a pool you've stocked with piranhas in front of dozens of witnesses. Do you understand the legal term for that, Marcus? It's called attempted murder." The guests began backing away from Marcus more noticeably now, suddenly very aware that they had been witnesses to a serious crime. Some were already texting their lawyers. Others were calculating how to spin their presence here to minimize damage to their own reputations. The party had transformed from a social event into a crime scene. Marcus's mouth opened and closed like one of his piranhas. No words coming out, he looked around desperately for support, for someone to back up his version of events, but every face he saw showed either horror, disgust, or the careful neutrality of people already distancing themselves. His empire of intimidation was crumbling before his eyes. Furthermore, Victoria continued, pulling out her own phone, "I've already sent the video I recorded to my legal team and to several journalist friends of mine. By tomorrow morning, the entire world will know what kind of monster you really are. Marcus Whitmore, your business partners will abandon you. Your board will remove you. And every contract you've signed will be scrutinized for ways to break ties with you." Sarah watched this exchange with a mixture of relief and amazement. She was still processing what had happened, still feeling the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She had survived against all odds. She had survived. But the reality of her situation was starting to sink in. She was unemployed now, certainly, and probably facing retaliation from one of the most powerful men in the city. But Victoria turned to Sarah with a gentle smile, the first kindness anyone at this party had shown her. "My dear, you're going to catch cold standing there in wet clothes. Maria," she called to the head housekeeper who was still crying on the deck. "Please take Sarah inside and get her dry clothes, medical attention if she needs it. And make sure she's comfortable. I have some questions for her, but they can wait until she's recovered from this ordeal." Maria rushed forward, wrapping a towel around Sarah's shoulders and guiding her toward the house. As they walked away, Sarah heard Victoria's voice behind them, now addressing the entire crowd with the commanding tone of someone used to controlling narratives. "I suggest everyone who witnessed what happened here tonight stay available for police questioning," Victoria announced. "This isn't going to be swept under the rug. This isn't going to disappear because Marcus throws money at it. Justice will be served. I'll personally make sure of it." Inside the mansion's guest quarters, Sarah sat wrapped in a plush bathrobe while Maria fussed over her,
checking for injuries and bringing hot tea.
The room was larger than Sarah's entire apartment back home, decorated with artwork that probably cost more than she would earn in a lifetime, but the luxury felt hollow and cold after what had just happened. Her hands still trembled slightly as she held the teacup, the adrenaline slowly draining from her system. Maria couldn't stop apologizing, tears streaming down her weathered face as she dabbed at a small cut on Sarah's arm, where a piranha had grazed her. "I should have done more. I should have stopped him. I've worked here for 10 years, and I've seen him be cruel, but never like this. Never anything like this." Her voice broke with guilt and shame. Sarah reached out and squeezed Maria's hand gently. "You would have lost your job, maybe worse. This isn't your fault, Maria. Men like Marcus Whitmore don't become monsters overnight. They've always been monsters. They just hide it better around people who matter to them." Her voice was steady now, the shock wearing off and being replaced by a calm clarity. A soft knock on the door interrupted them. Victoria Ashford entered without waiting for permission, her presence commanding even in the intimate space of the bedroom. She had removed her jewelry and carried herself with less formality now, revealing a grandmother's warmth beneath the steel exterior she showed the world. She sat down on the edge of the bed across from Sarah, studying her with intelligent, penetrating eyes. "You're not what you appear to be," Victoria said softly. It wasn't a question but a statement of fact. "The way you moved in that water, the way you handled yourself afterwards. Most people would have been hysterical, traumatized, but you're remarkably composed. So tell me, Sarah Mitchell, who are you really?" Sarah took a slow sip of her tea, buying herself a moment to decide how much to reveal. She had spent 3 months being invisible, being just another maid that people looked through rather than at. But Victoria Ashford was different. This woman had already proven she had power, and was willing to use it for justice. Perhaps it was time to stop hiding. My name is Sarah Mitchell. That part is true, Sarah began, her voice taking on a different quality, more educated, more confident than the subservient tone she had used around Marcus. I am a single mother with 2 children, that's also true. But what I didn't tell anyone when I applied for this job is that I have a master's degree in criminal justice from Georgia State University. Maria's eyes widened in shock, her hand flying to her mouth. Victoria merely nodded slowly, a knowing smile playing at her lips as pieces of a puzzle began falling into place in her mind. She had suspected there was more to this woman than met the eye, Sarah continued, her story pouring out now like water breaching a dam. I spent 12 years as a detective with the Atlanta Police Department, specializing in financial crimes and corruption. I was good at my job, really good. I helped put away corrupt politicians, embezzlers, and white-collar criminals who thought they were untouchable. But then my husband got sick, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and I took a leave of absence to care for him. The room was silent except for Sarah's voice. Maria had stopped her fussing and sat down heavily in a chair, her mind reeling from these revelations. Victoria leaned forward slightly, completely absorbed in the story. After David died, I tried to go back to work, but I couldn't focus, couldn't do the job the way it needed to be done. So I resigned, spent a year just surviving, working retail jobs and trying to keep my family afloat financially. My savings were gone. The medical bills had destroyed us even with insurance. Sarah's voice caught slightly at the memory, but she pushed through. Then about 6 months ago, I got a call from an old colleague, a federal agent I had worked with on several cases. Victoria's eyebrows raised with interest. This was becoming far more intriguing than she had anticipated. The FBI? She asked. Sarah nodded. They had been building a case against Marcus Whitmore for years. Tax evasion, securities fraud, bribery of public officials, money laundering through shell companies. The list was extensive, but Marcus was careful, very careful. He kept his distance from the actual illegal activities, used layers of intermediaries and dummy corporations to hide his involvement. So they needed someone on the inside, Victoria said, understanding dawning in her eyes. Someone who could get close, observe, gather evidence. Someone he would never suspect because of his own prejudices and arrogance. Sarah smiled grimly. Exactly. They knew Marcus had a pattern of treating his household staff terribly. High turnover. People who wouldn't ask questions because they needed the money desperately. I fit the profile perfectly. Single mother, financially struggling. No apparent connections to law enforcement. And she paused, her expression hardening. Black, which they knew would make Marcus underestimate me even more completely. Maria made a small sound of amazement. Her whole understanding of the past 3 months rewriting itself in her mind. All those times Sarah had been in Marcus's office cleaning. All those moments she had access to his private spaces. She hadn't just been dusting and vacuuming. She had been investigating. I've been documenting everything, Sarah continued. Photographing documents he left out. Recording conversations when he got drunk and careless. Tracking his visitors and phone calls. Building a comprehensive picture of his criminal enterprise. I have evidence of bribes to city council members. Proof of his involvement in insider trading schemes. Documentation of offshore accounts he uses to hide income from the IRS. Victoria let out a low whistle of appreciation. And tonight, when he tried to kill you, he handed you the final piece you needed. Assault, attempted murder, in front of dozens of witnesses and multiple video recordings. Even his expensive lawyers won't be able to make this disappear. Sarah nodded. The FBI was planning to move in about 6 weeks from now. Once they had completely traced all his financial networks. But after tonight, we can't wait that long. I need to contact my handler immediately. They'll need to accelerate the timeline before Marcus realizes what's happening and starts destroying evidence. Victoria pulled out her personal phone. Not the one she used for business, but a secure device she kept for sensitive matters. She handed it to Sarah without hesitation. Make your call. I'll make sure you have complete privacy. And Sarah, whatever you need from me, resources, legal support, protection, you have it. Men like Marcus Whitmore have operated above the law for far too long. Sarah took the phone gratefully and stepped into the adjoining bathroom, closing the door behind her. She dialed a number she had memorized, never stored in any device. After 2 rings, a man's voice answered. This is Collins. The voice was familiar, reassuring. Special Agent Robert Collins had been her handler for the entire operation. It's Songbird, Sarah used her operation codename. "We have a situation. The target just attempted to murder me in front of approximately 40 witnesses. It's on video, multiple recordings. We need to move now before he starts covering his tracks." There was a brief silence on the other end. Then she heard Collins swear softly, "Are you injured? Do you need immediate extraction?" His professional concern was evident. Sarah looked at herself in the massive bathroom mirror. Her hair still damp, a few minor scratches on her arms, but otherwise intact. "I'm fine. Shaken but functional, and I'm with Victoria Ashford. She witnessed everything and she's offering support. We can trust her." Collins was quiet for a moment, processing this development. Victoria Ashford's involvement changed the dynamics considerably. Her media empire and political connections could either help or complicate matters depending on how things played out.
Stay where you are, I'm activating the team now.
We'll have agents there within 2 hours. Can you keep Whitmore contained until then? We can't let him access his computers or communicate with his associates, Sarah thought quickly. Victoria can help with that. She's already threatened him publicly. Told everyone the police would be involved. He's probably panicking right now, trying to figure out his next move. She paused, then added, "Collins, I have something else. Maria Ramirez, the head housekeeper. She's been here 10 years. She's seen things, knows things. She could be a valuable witness, but she's terrified. We need to protect her too." Noted. Anyone else on the staff we should be concerned about? Collins was already typing. Sarah could hear the keyboard clicking in the background. Most of the staff are good people just trying to make a living. But there's a man named Victor, Marcus's personal security chief. Former military, completely loyal to Marcus. He might be a problem if he realizes what's happening. Collins acknowledged this information. "We'll have tactical support with us. If this Victor becomes an issue, we'll handle it." Sarah, you've done incredible work on this case. 3 months of perfect cover. The evidence you've gathered is going to put Whitmore away for decades. Just hold on a little longer. Sarah ended the call and returned to the bedroom where Victoria and Maria waited. She handed the phone back to Victoria with a nod of thanks. "The FBI is coming, about 2 hours. But we need to keep Marcus from accessing his office or his computers in that time. If he starts deleting files or alerting his accomplices, we could lose critical evidence." Victoria's mind was already working through the possibilities. Decades of running a media empire had taught her how to think strategically under pressure. The party is still going on out there, barely. Most guests are trying to leave discreetly, but some are staying out of morbid curiosity or because they want to see how this ends. I can use that. I'll go back out and keep Marcus engaged. Make him think he still has a chance to spin this situation if he cooperates with the narrative I'm creating. Maria spoke up, her voice still shaky but determined. "I can help too. I know the security codes. I know where Marcus keeps his important documents. I've been cleaning his office for years. If we need to preserve evidence or prevent him from reaching something, I can guide people there." Her guilt over not stopping the attack earlier was transforming into a fierce desire to help bring Marcus down. Sarah looked at both women with gratitude and respect. "This is dangerous. Both of you need to understand that. Marcus has already shown he's willing to kill to protect himself. If he figures out what we're doing before the FBI arrives, I don't know what he might do." Victoria waved away the concern with an elegant gesture. "My dear, I've faced down corrupt governments and murderous dictators in my career as a journalist. Before I inherited my father's media empire, I spent 20 years in war zones and political hotspots. Marcus Whitmore is a spoiled bully with money. Nothing more." The 3 women quickly formulated a plan. Victoria would return to the terrace and use her influence to keep the remaining guests there, creating witnesses and obstacles that would prevent Marcus from slipping away or accessing his office unobserved. Maria would position herself near the main staircase, the primary route to Marcus's second-floor office, ready to alert the others if he tried to go there. Sarah would stay in the guest quarters but remain in contact via Maria's phone, coordinating and providing guidance. As they prepared to separate, Sarah caught Maria's arm gently. "After tonight, your life is going to change. Marcus will know you helped. You can't stay here. You can't go back to your normal routine. The FBI will offer you witness protection if you want it. But you need to think about what that means. Leaving everything behind." Maria's eyes welled with tears, but she nodded firmly. "I have 3 grandchildren in Mexico. I send money to support them. That's why I stayed here so long, despite how terrible Marcus is. But I can't keep working for a monster. I can't keep silent about the things I've seen. Whatever happens, I'll deal with it. Some things are more important than money. Victoria checked her appearance in the mirror, smoothing her dress and adjusting her posture back into the commanding presence she showed the world. Gentlemen like Marcus make a critical mistake. They think power comes from money and intimidation, but real power comes from integrity and the willingness to stand up for what's right. Tonight we're going to teach him that lesson. She turned to Sarah with a slight smile. And my dear, once this is over, once Marcus is behind bars where he belongs, come see me. I have a feeling someone with your skills and experience would be a valuable addition to my investigative journalism team. The pay is considerably better than Maid work, and you'd be helping expose corruption on a much larger scale. Victoria swept back onto the terrace with the confidence of a queen entering her court. The scene that greeted her was one of barely controlled chaos. About 15 guests remained, clustered in nervous groups, whispering urgently while casting furtive glances at Marcus, who stood alone by the bar, downing scotch directly from a crystal decanter. His hair was disheveled, his expensive suit jacket discarded on a chair, and his eyes had taken on a wild, desperate quality. The moment Marcus saw Victoria, something shifted in his expression, calculation replacing panic. He set down the decanter and approached her with the careful movements of a man trying to appear sober and in control. Victoria, thank God you're still here. We need to talk, privately. I can explain everything that happened. It wasn't what it looked like. Victoria regarded him with cold amusement, like a scientist observing an interesting but repulsive specimen. Oh, I think it was exactly what it looked like, Marcus. You attempted to murder your employee because you thought you could get away with it, because you've gotten away with so much for so long that you believed yourself untouchable. Her voice carried across the terrace, ensuring the remaining guests heard every word. Marcus's mask of composure cracked slightly, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper. You don't understand that woman, Sarah. She's been snooping around my office, going through my things. I think she might be some kind of industrial spy, trying to steal business secrets. I was just trying to scare her, to teach her a lesson about respecting boundaries. The lie was clumsy, desperate, the improvisation of a man watching his world collapse. So your solution to suspected espionage was murder by Piranha? Victoria's eyebrow arched elegantly. Marcus, even by your standards, that's remarkably stupid. But we both know that's not the real reason. Shall I tell you what I think? I think you're exactly what you appear to be, a cruel, bigoted man who enjoys wielding power over people you consider beneath you. Tonight you simply went too far with an audience watching? Marcus's face flushed dark red. Rage and fear battling for dominance, he grabbed Victoria's arm, his fingers digging in with bruising force. You listen to me, you sanctimonious bitch. You think your media empire makes you untouchable? I have dirt on half the people in this city, including you. I know about the bribes your father paid to build his newspaper chain. I know about the sources you've protected who were actually criminals. I can destroy your reputation with a single phone call. Victoria didn't flinch, didn't pull away. She simply looked down at his hand on her arm, then back up to his face with an expression of withering contempt. Remove your hand, Marcus, or I'll have every person here witness you commit assault for the second time tonight. Her voice was ice. Marcus released her and stepped back, breathing heavily around them. The remaining guests had pulled out their phones again, recording this new confrontation. They had come for entertainment and scandal, and Marcus was providing both in abundance. His carefully constructed image of sophisticated wealth was disintegrating before their eyes, revealing the brutish reality beneath. Here's what's going to happen, Victoria continued, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to dictating terms. You're going to sit down and wait for the police to arrive. You're not going to leave this property. You're not going to make any phone calls. And you're certainly not going to go anywhere near your office or computers if you try any of those things. I will personally ensure that every media outlet I own runs this story on loop for the next month. Marcus laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. The police? You think I'm afraid of the police? I have 3 commissioners in my pocket. I have lawyers on retainer who cost more per hour than most people make in a month. By tomorrow, this will be forgotten. An unfortunate accident at a party, and that maid will be the one facing charges for trespassing and creating a disturbance. Is that what you really believe? Victoria's voice was almost pitying. Marcus, you pushed a woman into a pool of piranhas in front of 40 witnesses. It's on video. From multiple angles. There's no spinning that. There's no making it disappear. Your money can't save you this time. Your connections can't save you. You've finally done something so publicly monstrous that not even your wealth can buy your way out. Something in Marcus broke then. The reality of his situation finally penetrating his alcohol-soaked denial. He stumbled backward, his hand reaching out to steady himself against a marble column. No, that can't be. I'm Marcus Whitmore. I'm untouchable. I've built an empire. I've created thousands of jobs. I've donated millions to charity. One mistake can't destroy all of that. One mistake. Victoria's voice rose with genuine anger. You call attempted murder one mistake? How many other mistakes have you made, Marcus? How many other people have you hurt, humiliated, destroyed over the years? Tonight wasn't an aberration. It was simply the first time you got caught on camera. Marcus's legs gave out and he sank into a chair, his head in his hands, the fight draining out of him as the full weight of consequences finally registered. Please, his voice was barely a whisper. Please, Victoria, I'll do anything. I'll pay anything, name your price. I'll give you exclusive rights to my company's story. I'll fund your investigative journalism projects, just make this go away. Please. Victoria looked down at him with disgust. There it is! The inevitable moment when bullies realize they're not as powerful as they thought. When they start begging for mercy they never showed others. The answer is no, Marcus. There is no price. There is no deal. You're going to face justice for what you've done. Inside the house, Maria watched through a window, her phone clutched in her trembling hand. She texted Sarah an update. Victoria has him contained. He's breaking down. Tried to bribe her, but she refused. He hasn't tried to leave or go to his office. Sarah's response came quickly. Good, FBI is 30 minutes out. Keep watching him. If he moves, alert me immediately, but Marcus wasn't done yet. Desperation can make even cowards dangerous. As Victoria turned to address the remaining guests, explaining that police would need statements from everyone, Marcus's hand slipped into his pocket, his fingers closing around his personal phone. He had one card left to play, one person who could still help him, his head of security. Victor was off duty tonight but lived in the guest house on the property. If he could just send one text. Part 8. Justice and Redemption. Maria saw Marcus pull out his phone, his fingers moving quickly across the screen. Her heart jumped into her throat as she realized what he was doing. She immediately texted Sarah. Marcus has his phone. He's texting someone. Looks urgent. Within seconds, Sarah was calling Maria. Her voice urgent but controlled. Who is he contacting? Can you see? Maria squinted through the window, trying to read Marcus's body language. Probably Victor, his security chief. He lives in the guest house behind the property. If Victor gets involved, this could get dangerous. He's ex-military, completely loyal to Marcus, and he has weapons. Sarah's mind raced through scenarios. The FBI was still 20 minutes away. Too far if Victor decided to help Marcus escape or destroy evidence. I'm coming out, Sarah decided. We can't let this escalate. Stay where you are, Maria. Keep yourself safe. She ended the call and moved quickly, pulling on a dry uniform that Maria had brought earlier. Her detective instincts were fully engaged now. The careful submission she had worn like a mask for 3 months completely stripped away. Sarah emerged onto the terrace just as a large man in casual clothes came striding around the side of the mansion. Victor was in his mid-40s, built like a linebacker with cold eyes that assessed situations with military precision. He took in the scene quickly, the nervous guests, Victoria standing with arms crossed and Marcus hunched in a chair looking defeated. Victor's hand rested casually near his waistband where Sarah knew he kept a concealed weapon. Mr. Whitmore, Victor's voice was calm but authoritative. I got your message. What's the situation? Marcus looked up, hope flickering in his bloodshot eyes. Victor, thank God these people are trying to destroy me. They're making false accusations. I need you to escort me to my office. There are documents I need to secure. Private business matters that can't fall into the wrong hands. Victoria stepped forward, positioning herself between Victor and Marcus. This man attempted to murder one of his employees tonight. In front of dozens of witnesses, the police are on their way. If you help him, you'll be charged as an accessory after the fact. I suggest you walk away while you still can. Victor's expression didn't change. His loyalty apparently outweighed his common sense, but Sarah moved quickly, stepping into Victor's line of sight. When she spoke, her voice carried a different authority than the subservient tone she had used for months. Victor Reeves, former Army Ranger, served 2 tours in Afghanistan. Honorable discharge in 2015. You're a soldier, which means you understand the concept of lawful orders. What Marcus is asking you to do right now is not lawful. It's obstruction of justice. and it will destroy everything you've built since leaving the service. Victor's eyes narrowed as he studied Sarah more carefully, recognizing that something fundamental had shifted. "Who are you?" he asked, his hand still near his weapon but not moving toward it. Sarah pulled out a badge she had kept hidden for 3 months. Her FBI credentials identifying her as a consultant working with the Financial Crimes Division. "My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm working with the Federal Bureau of Investigation on a long-term investigation into Marcus Whitmore's criminal activities. In approximately 15 minutes, this property will be swarmed with federal agents executing search warrants. They will seize all computers, documents, and financial records. If you interfere with that process, you will go to prison. Is Marcus Whitmore worth throwing away your freedom?" Victor looked from Sarah to Marcus, understanding dawning in his eyes. His employer hadn't just committed assault tonight. He had walked into a federal trap that had been years in the making. Marcus saw Victor's hesitation and lurched to his feet. "She's lying. She's just a maid. A nobody trying to make herself important. Victor, I pay you very well. I've been loyal to you. Now I need you to be loyal to me. You pay me to provide security, not to break federal law," Victor said quietly, his hand moving away from his weapon. "I'm sorry, Mr. Whitmore, but I'm not going to prison for you. Whatever you've done, you're on your own." He turned and walked away, ignoring Marcus's desperate calls for him to come back. Marcus collapsed back into his chair, all fight finally gone. He looked at Sarah with hatred and disbelief. You were FBI the whole time? Everything, the job application, the references, all of it was fake?" Sarah shook her head. "The references were real. Everything in my application was true. I just didn't mention my previous career. You never asked. You never looked beyond what you wanted to see. A desperate woman you could exploit and abuse." The sound of vehicles approaching cut through the night air. Multiple cars with flashing lights turned into the long driveway. The FBI had arrived right on schedule. Special Agent Collins emerged from the first vehicle with a team of agents behind him. They moved with practiced efficiency, some heading into the mansion with search warrants, others securing the perimeter. Collins approached Sarah first, his weathered face showing relief. "Songbird, good to see you in one piece. We heard about the pool incident. Are you sure you're okay?" Sarah nodded. "I'm fine. The target is contained." His security chief declined to interfere, and we have multiple witnesses, including Victoria Ashford, who recorded everything. Victoria stepped forward, extending her hand to Collins. "Agent Collins, I presume?" "I'm Victoria Ashford. I have video evidence of tonight's assault, witness contact information, and I'm prepared to provide whatever support your investigation needs." Collins shook her hand gratefully, understanding immediately the value of having someone with Victoria's resources and credibility as an ally. 2 agents approached Marcus with handcuffs, reading him his rights as they pulled him to his feet. "Marcus Whitmore, you're under arrest for attempted murder, tax evasion, securities fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit bribery." The list continued as they led him away. Marcus went quietly, all the arrogance and cruelty drained out of him, leaving only a pathetic shell of a man. As Marcus was placed in the back of an FBI vehicle, he looked out the window one last time at his mansion, his symbol of power and success. By tomorrow it would be seized as evidence, along with his other properties. His bank accounts would be frozen. His business empire would crumble as partners scrambled to distance themselves. Everything he had built through corruption and cruelty would be dismantled piece by piece. Sarah watched him go, feeling a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction that justice was being served, but sadness for all the people Marcus had hurt over the years. People who had suffered in silence because they thought he was too powerful to touch. She thought about her children waiting at home, wondering why their mother was late. Soon she could tell them the truth about what she had been doing, about how she had helped bring down a monster. Victoria appeared beside her. "That was quite a performance, Detective Mitchell. 3 months of perfect cover. You should be very proud." Sarah smiled tiredly. "I couldn't have done it without your help tonight. If you hadn't intervened, if you hadn't stood up to him, things might have ended very differently." "Well," Victoria said with a slight smile, "that's what power is really for, not to dominate and control, but to protect those who need protection and ensure justice prevails. And I meant what I said earlier. When you're ready, come talk to me about a job. The world needs more people like you, people with integrity and courage." As the sun began to rise over the mansion, FBI agents continued their methodical search. Maria sat in the kitchen giving her statement to an agent. Her voice strong despite her tears. She would testify about everything she had witnessed over 10 years. Her courage inspiring other staff members to come forward with their own stories of Marcus's cruelty. Sarah finally called her children, hearing their sleepy voices asking where she was. "I'll be home soon," she told them. "And I have so much to tell you about courage, about justice, and about never judging people by what they appear to be on the surface. I love you both so much." As she ended the call, Sarah looked back at the mansion one more time. 3 months ago, she had walked through those doors as someone Marcus Whitmore had believed he could break. Tonight, she walked away as the woman who had brought him to justice, and that made every moment of humiliation worthwhile.